Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I am coming at you with the first of quite a few reviews that I will have up in the next 1 or 2 months. And the reason for that is that, as I said in my 2021 goals video, I want to have a review up of every single adult high fantasy book that is written by a woman, or co-written in this case by a woman, that I read within 2021 or that I read in general. And since I have quite a few of those on my current TBR, there's quite a few of those reviews coming at you in the next few weeks. And the first of those is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, which is the first book in the Rook and Rose trilogy. And this book was so good. It was so good. It was a 5 out of 5 stars. Another one of those which I cannot believe, because I was struggling so much finding 5-star reads in the first 3/4 of 2020, and in 2021 it's like barely more than 1 month over and I already have 3 5-star reads. So I don't know what's up with that, but I'm very happy about it. Before we get into the review though, let's get a few things out of the way first. The first of those is that M.A. Carrick is a pen name for an author duo of Marie Brennan and Alec Helms. Alec Helms hasn't written anything that I've ever heard of. However, Marie Brennan is the author of the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, if you're familiar with that. It's also a series that is very high up on my TBR and that I want to get to within 2021 hopefully, but that's not the point of this video, so moving on. Also, both of the authors are anthropologists and folklorists, which is so exciting to me because, yeah, there's some good stuff connected to that within this book, certainly. Then as for the review, usually my reviews are all spoiler-free, which this one will be as well, mostly. However, with this one I do have a few things, like not theories, but like thoughts on where the story is headed and so on, that I want to talk about at the very end of this review. However, I will tell you beforehand, so if you have not read this book, you can go and click away from the video then and just watch the spoiler-free part of this review. And now I think we have everything out of the way, so I think we can get into a plot summary. This series is an adult high fantasy series in a very Venetian-inspired setting. We mainly follow Ren, who grew up in the city, then left and now has returned. She is a con artist and she's determined to get a better lot for herself and for her sister in future in life, and to do that she tries to get adopted into a noble family, and that is the biggest con she has ever pulled off yet. And on the side there's also some mysteries going on. There's a new drug on the streets that has some very weird and creepy consequences. There's children going missing, and when they're found again they can't sleep until they fall over dead, and there's just so many elements, way too many to properly summarize here, but I think that is enough that you have to know to go into this book. It's better to go into fantasy books blind anyway. So now let's talk of my thoughts on this and why I love this book so much. But first, as always, we gotta start with the negatives. However, there's only really one negative that I have to say that I personally didn't even see as a negative, because I enjoyed it in high fantasy books actually, but it's the thing that I have seen most people complain about, that DNF the book or that didn't like it that much. And that is that this book has a very slow start. The beginning of the book is very much on a small scale. It's very much contained mostly to Ren and her con. We're kind of learning about all the characters, all the players within the story. We learn a bit about the politics of the city, but it's not so much about the mysteries. We get hints to the mysteries already, but it's not really about the bigger plot of the book, but just about Ren trying to get into this noble family. And while there certainly are elements that are already set into motion, it does take the first third to the first half of the book to really pick up its plot and pick up its pace. However, I kind of preferred it in adult high fantasy, gotta be honest. I like it when we're kind of slowly introduced into the world, to the characters and so on. And that just makes it almost more satisfying when all the strings come together at the very end of the book. Gotta be honest. So that's the one negative, I guess. I could say about the book. Aside from that, like, gotta find a way to structure this properly. First, let's talk about the world building. First of all, I absolutely love the politics in this book. There wasn't too much, but there was quite a bit, just enough to make it interesting and to be interested in the politics without being confused. And I just love that it wasn't politics set up with like imperialism as it is usually within adult high fantasy like Game of Thrones and so on. But as the city is very much based on Venice, there's a lot of like trading politics, and also you have these noble families that kind of vie for dominance within the city. And so you don't have a monarchy within this story, but you have like an aristocracy, I would say. I think that's the word used when you have a few families who kind of can say what's up and so on, and they have this council thing. Something I also found really interesting is that the family that Ren tries to con her way into is a family that very much is disgraced. They're at the beginning of ruin, so to speak, and so you obviously get a lot of the elements of the politics from their side. Then the second thing I loved with the setting is that you kind of get two different ethnicities within this world. One ethnicity very much is the noble families and so on, the richer people, and the other ethnicity obviously is the poorer part of town. And while we don't get too much information on what exactly makes the two ethnicities different from each other and so on, I found that there were enough information on that to really make it interesting and to kind of get where the conflict between the two sides came from, because that conflict also is not a big part of the story, but very much an important part of the story. And I'm interested to see where we go with that conflict and with the two sides in the next books, and if we'll see more of what exactly makes the two ethnicities different from each other. And then the last thing, when it comes to setting, which, oh my god, my anthropologist heart loves this part. So first of all, I have a little bit of a pet peeve, and that is randomly making cultures in your fantasies non-heteronormative, which, don't click away, you know I absolutely love it when cultures within fantasy are non-heteronormative. I way prefer it to cultures that are heteronormative within fantasy. However, what I mean with just randomly making them non-heteronormative is that I have discovered, kind of, that a lot of fantasy authors have this thing where they're basically having cultures that are based on heteronormative cultures in our world, but they just add non-heteronormativity into it and don't kind of spend a second thinking of it. How would that culture change if heteronormativity within this culture isn't a thing anymore? For example, you quite often get this thing where you have cultures that completely normalize like sapphic or Achillean couples. It's completely normal. No one bats an eyelash at that. But then at the same time, they still have a blood-based like lineage system where the heir is someone who like is blood-based on their father or mother. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't work. I mean, it can work, but if you have a blood-based lineage system, that kind of implies that heteronormative couples are like a level higher or superior to non-heteronormative couples. Because obviously in non-heteronormative couples, a lot of times blood-based lineage doesn't work all that well. And this world is the first world, which, by the way, I'm not saying it doesn't exist anywhere else, but the first world where I have read it and I have noticed that conscious decisions were made to make this world non-heteronormative, but in a way that works with the culture itself. And the way that it's done is because basically you have family register, and the important thing isn't blood, but the important thing is that you're in the family register. And I think you're not even automatically in the family register just because you're born into a family, but you have to be put into the family register. And you can bring people from outside into the family register and so on, which, you know, that just makes it so much easier for non-heteronormative couples to get an heir that's legitimate, because it's not based on blood. And yeah, I just absolutely love that. so good. So good. I'm not even 100% sure if I'm not reading into it a little bit, because, you know, it's not talked about a lot. However, since both of the authors are anthropologists or have experience with anthropology, I would guess that that was done on purpose, and I love it. It's the best non-heteronormative setting that I have ever read, like, period. But yeah, so the first thing that I absolutely loved about this book is the setting. From just the vibe, the aesthetics, to the way the different groups interacted with each other, to the politics, to, as I said, the non-heteronormativity. Then the other thing I absolutely loved was the characters. Oh my god, I love the characters so much. I love Ren, I love Leato, I love the Rook, which, by the way, there's this kind of vigilante type character that no one knows who they are, and he's a type of role because he has existed for over 200 years now, and obviously no one lives 200 years in this world, and so it's kind of a role that gets passed on through generations. And that character is so interesting. And it's also so interesting with the characters because you have these different levels, especially later in the book, where you're like, okay, who knows what character of whom? Because you're kind of trying to find out who the Rook is, which, by the way, at the end I was completely blindsided. I was like, well, I didn't see that coming. But then you also have Ren, who, because of her con, has different, like, alter egos, and you then have to keep up with which characters know which of her alter egos, which, you know, it's just so much fun, so beautiful. I absolutely love the characters. I thought they had so much heart and so much depth. Especially Ren as a character was absolutely amazing. She's such a strong female character, but not your typical strong female character where she knows, you know, how to fight and whatever. But she is in a way very feminine and so on. And yeah, absolutely loved that about her. I also loved her sister Tess, who is a seamstress. I think that's the right word. She, like, knows how to make garments and so on, and the description of those garments, of those dresses, is so gorgeous and so beautiful. And, you know, you don't often get a character whose main characteristic is that they just love sewing. Also, I forgot that about the setting. The magic systems are really interesting. You have multiple magic systems. Some are kind of based on, like, astrology, others are kind of based on tarot. How do you say it in English? I don't know. But anyway, most of the magic systems are very soft magic systems. So far we do not know yet exactly how they work. It's not explained that much, but it just gives it this kind of mystical, magical flair, which I absolutely enjoyed. But yeah, if you prefer very hard magic systems, probably won't enjoy this magic system too much. But if you're a fan of just whimsical, mystical magic systems, definitely go and pick this book up. But now back to the characters. Like, I wouldn't say the main villain, maybe the main villain. Like, one of the main villains of the story was one of the most terrifying villains ever. But, like, not in a human terrifying way, but in a kind of you make me have nightmares type of way. Like, they were just, oh my god. I gotta be honest, when I first had the reveal of this villain, it was quite late at night and I was like, well, I hope I'm not gonna have nightmares from that, because yeah, there's creepy, also a lot of stuff with nightmares and nightmare dream magic within this book, which I also really enjoyed. And then the last thing I absolutely love that I want to talk about is the plot. As I said, I just love the plot. I love the slow build at the very beginning and kind of having different elements from different parts of the plot, I would say, from different story arcs, kind of in the first half of the book, and then the end of the story, binding all of those story arcs together. I love trying to find out who the Rook is. I absolutely love trying to find out what, like, the goal of the different characters is, because you have a few characters where you're like, they're kind of questionable a little bit. Are they good guys? Are they bad guys? Love those parts of the plot. And the very ending of the plot is just like bam, bam, bam. one thing happens after the other. It's so quick, but not in a way where the pacing of the book, at least for me, felt unbalanced, because the beginning was so slow but the ending was so quick, but more because it was just a continuous build up towards the end. And so yeah, absolutely loved that. Loved every element of this book, and I cannot recommend you enough to pick up this book because it's so good. It is so good. But now that was it for the spoiler-free section, and now we're getting into the spoilery stuff, which mostly is just me talking about how stupid I felt with every single reveal that happened in the book. So if you haven't read this book yet, go and read it and then come back here. So is there only people left now who have read this book? Good, because you know what? There's like a few things actually. First, let's talk about Vargo. I don't know why, but I absolutely didn't see it coming at the end that he's gonna be just a cold, ruthless asshole, which I should have seen coming. It was there from the very beginning that he's a crime boss, that he only cares about himself and so on. But I don't know why. For some reason he was written so charismatically and so charming that I don't know, I felt myself drawn into his character the same way Ren was. And because of that, I was kind of blindsided by how much of a cold asshole he really is. Because, I don't know, I just wanted him to be like this morally grey crime boss good guy. You know, that character type exists, but he's not. And I really want to see where like the storyline with him goes in the future. And I want to know what's up with his spirit sidekick dude that he has, because what's up with that? I don't know, but I want to know. And then also, of course, the Rook. Okay, first there were hints that Leato was the Rook, okay? And I was like, you know what? I mean, the hints are a bit obvious, so, you know, but like, it's okay. Maybe they're obvious. But then obviously he wasn't the Rook and he died, which, by the way, I am not over. He was my favorite character. Why did he have to die was heartbreaking. And like 4 chapters afterwards, I was almost sure that he wasn't dead. At first I was like, okay, he only died in the dream. He's not really dead, right? Then they found his body and I was like, I don't know, maybe he was the Rook after all and he's like a split personality spirit type thing and a part of him survived or something, and it's just, no, it wasn't. I was heartbroken. But yeah, he ended up not being the Rook. Then there was hints that Vargo might be the Rook, and I was like, okay, maybe that makes sense. That would make sense why he has like his spirit dude. Maybe that's what the Rook is about, that you have like the spirit in your mind and that's what makes you the Rook. And by the way, I only noticed, I don't know, maybe I just didn't read it closely enough, but I only noticed that the spirit is actually just a spirit and no one else can see him when Sedge mentioned that Vargo talks to himself. Because I was like, maybe he's his second in command, but they just always can talk telepathically. And so they talk telepathically so the other people don't hear what they're saying. But apparently not. So yeah, that was interesting. Was also blindsided by that. So yeah, Vargo obviously also didn't end up being the Rook. And you know what? I was like, okay, either Vargo is the Rook or Leato is the Rook, or the Rook is a character we don't know yet and we're gonna find out in the future books who the Rook is. Because like no part of myself ever considered Grey to be the Rook. No part, not a single part of myself. Which, you know, at first when I found out and when I finished the book, I was like, maybe there was like kind of not set up enough, because, you know, when you have a mystery like that, you want to have hints that you can kind of find out who it is, or that you can look back at the story and are like, oh, actually it's obvious that this person's the Rook. And when I finished the book, I was like, well, this came a little bit too out of the nowhere. I mean, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about that. But then I remembered that actually it was set up. We got at least one hint that Grey is the Rook, and that was that Ren for the first time thought Leato was the Rook when she saw him fighting, because she was like, hey, his fighting style is the same style as the Rook, and he has been sneaking around a lot, so he's probably, maybe, possibly the Rook. And you know what I then remembered? That Grey and Leato used to take fighting lessons together from the same teacher. So it would make sense that they have the same fighting style, which it was there all along. And yeah, now I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm interested to see where the Rook and Rose relationship goes. I'm interested to see where Grey and Ren's relationship goes, because Grey so far hasn't shown any signs that he knows who Ren is. So interested to see where this goes, also because like Ren and the Rook have a lot of chemistry. Gonna be interesting to see how their relationship develops, although I'm not sure if I want a romantic relationship between the two of them. But yeah, their relationship and their chemistry is way different from Grey and Ren's chemistry and relationship, which I just find very interesting, and I'm very interested to see where it goes. But yeah, basically there was the few spoilery things that I wanted to mention still. And yeah, I love this book so much. If you have read it, if you have any thoughts on it that you want to share with me, tell me in the comments down below. I want people to talk about this book with, because it's so good. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. All the links to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman per month, are also in the description box down below, so go and check those out as well. And I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!